Okay, hi. I know people tend to join a little later, but it's 2 o'clock and I'd love to honor your time. So welcome. My name is Melanie Gruenwald. I'm the Executive Director at Kabbalah Experience. This is Coffee and Kabbalah on Thursdays at 2, and it's great to have you here. So just to get started, I'd love to do a few introductions, if you don't mind. Maybe who you are and where you are and why you showed up today. Hi. So Lynn, why don't you get us started?
Hello, I am coming to you from sunny, hot Arizona. I have a mixed family. My mother Catholic, my father Jewish, and this is a path that seems to coincide with where I am in my life and finding myself, and I'm anxious to learn more about Kabbalah.
Welcome. Louise?
Hi, I'm Louise Oram. I'm from St. Petersburg, Florida. And I learned about Kabbalah. I took a class on Facebook with Rabbi Newman, and also learned about it in the Maya class through Hebrew College. And then studying on my own. And I enjoy it very much. In this class in particular, I noticed last week that my blood pressure came way down by the time the class was. I was so relaxed that I should have taken my blood pressure right then, because I'm sure it was right where it should be. So you're doing something really good for everybody too.
Thank you, Louise. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. Corrine, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everybody. I'm Corinne. I'm from the island Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. It's around midnight here. I'm interested in Kabbalah since the last few years. I'm seeking conversion, and I'm doing all I can to study and to enlighten my pathway to Judaism. Thank you.
Great. It's so nice to have you here each week. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Catherine.
I'm from Hurley, New York. I heard about you through my congregation, the Woodstock Jewish congregation in Woodstock, New York. And I am anxious to know, a little bit more about Kabbalah. Hence, I have been joining you.
It's good to see you.
It's my pleasure to come in. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Rachel. Unmute.
I'm with Lynn. Lynn said that she's trying to find some herself or something with Kabbalah. I've been studying Kabbalah for a long time. It's very difficult to, to find it, but I'm enjoying it and loving it and always loved it. So thank you so much.
Great. Welcome back. Victor?
Yeah, I'm Victor, and I may not pronounce things right. However, I've been just self-studying Judaism, and I guess I would be considered a gar or gur, or however you call it. And I did a little Kabbalah with Benny Baruch under Rab Lightman, and I was enjoying it. But then I felt they got into political stuff, and that's when I got out. I'm not here for that. I'm here just to participate in with the spirituality or whatever. I really enjoy Kabbalah. It opens my mind up to different things. I studied Buddhism for about 10, 15 years, and I was a personal assistant to a monk. And I felt that path led me to here. And I really enjoy the Jewish religion and the
Close
people.
the door. Thank you.
And that's it.
Welcome. It's great to have you here. No, Leonard, we teach a class on the Kabbalah of Leonard Cohen, and he also studied Buddhism and we've worked with a monk. So there's a lot between Jewish practice and Buddhist practice that is very much aligned. So welcome. It's great to have you here. Sean, do you like to introduce yourself? Maybe not yet. Grizel? Okay, Leona, is that you? Who's on as iPhone? I can't see your face or your name.
And Annette.
Okay.
Hi.
Oh, there you are. Okay. What's your name?
Annette.
Annette, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself? Where are you? How did you end up here today?
I've been there with you last week, and I'm from Florida.
Great. Welcome. If you
Thank
want to turn your video on, then it's easier to see your face. Corinne and Sean as well. So then I could see where you are and see who you are. Great. Are you guys able to hear me okay?
Yes, we do. I do.
Okay. Terrific. Well, welcome. It's terrific to have you all today. Coffee and Kabbalah is our weekly drop-in class. I generally spend the week thinking about things that I like to discuss with you. And something I've been reading this week is The Sabbath by Abraham Joshua Heschel. Has anybody read this book or explored it?
I started
great.
it.
Definitely get your hands on it if you're interested
It's
in
in my
learning.
pile.
So it's a classic. Abraham Joshua Heschel is a professor of theology. He's no longer alive, but he wrote this terrific book about the Sabbath and talking about the sanctity of time and the sanctity of space. That we spend so much of our lives toiling to create space, right? To create monuments, to create homes, to collect stuff, right? To build. And what he looks at is Judaism as a religion of time, of sanctifying time. And he hones it down to the conversation about the Sabbath. But what I've been thinking about lately is the idea of how in the past year and a half through the pandemic, we've really done our work to sanctify time as a people, right? We haven't been able to gather together in space, right? We haven't been able to gather in our school and our houses of worship. And now as the world is starting to reopen up again, what does that mean for us as we want to create meaning in physical space? So thinking about time, right, and time transcending everything, right? We can control space, we can master space, we can till our soil and plant plants and flowers and develop agriculture. We could build homes and monuments and office buildings and churches and synagogues and other places of worship, right? We could build highways and bridges, but we can't control time. Right? Time is beyond our control. And yet, right, we're always working to sanctify time and to find meaning in time. And what Judaism teaches us is about the Sabbath, right? That the Sabbath becomes a cathedral in time. That this is when we're told, don't create, right? Don't toil. Don't even think about working. Right? If you have to think about repairing, if you're walking on Saturday afternoon and you notice that your fence is broken, if you think about repairing it on Saturday, don't fix it Saturday night because you thought about the labor on the Sabbath, right? The idea is that it's up to us to kind of pull back, right? To withdraw, to create space for the actual work of creation to occur. It just as Isaac Luria, who was one of the great Kabbalists of Sfat, taught us, in the story of creation, he talks about the idea of tzimtzum, of contraction, that God needed to contract God's self in order to create space for creation to occur. And if you've ever been a parent or a teacher or a communal leader, right, or a volunteer, you know that sometimes we have to pull back in order to let other people emerge, right, to let other styles, other spirits, right, emerge in their leadership. And when we create time, whether it's a Sabbath on a Saturday or just create time for meditation or reflection or not going and being and doing all the time, right? That's when we actually create space for the magic to occur, right? That's where we create the space for creation to occur. And what Heschel's teaching us in the Sabbath, in the book on the Sabbath, is that the world's going to keep spinning in spite of us, right? It's not, we don't always have to be going and doing. We can pause and the world's going to still exist. In spite of humanity, right? So I'm wondering for you, as we're in this period of transition of reemerging from COVID, what does that look like to you as we're leaving our physical spaces, right, that have become very familiar? We might be able to welcome more people in, or we might be going out a bit more, right, whether it's traveling or connecting in community. How do we start to negotiate? How do we start to navigate these building blocks of time and space and understanding our place in them? So what's coming up for you in that question?
For me, it's I felt in my own personal feeling, obviously, that the creator gave us the gift of COVID because it made us, like you said, contract, and it made us, but I don't think a lot of people are coming out of it, as you say, with the right focus that on what the creator gave us, our chance to reflect and make space for life, and knowing that we're all connected, because we are all connected in the world, because as we see with the pandemic. And for me, it just looks like to come out with a refreshed view or thought of the creator is Hashem, or whatever you want to call it, is in charge, not me. And I just have to just go with it and do what I do. But I'm not in charge, and I'm not in control. And when I run into interact with people now, I try to do it in a more positive way. I was work part-time for my friend. I was doing electrical work, and the lady who worked for just came up to me one day and said, I want to be like you when I grow up. I'm like, what? She goes, you're always positive. And I never thought of it that I was or was not. I guess this made me just refocus my life, this whole pandemic, coming out to be a better person. At least I'm trying. That's what it's done for me.
Great, thank you. What else?
I'll go. I mean, time and space is very precious now. I was very ill right before COVID, so I've kind of been quarantined for two years now. So for me, stepping out, especially because it's still not, everything's, not cleared up out there. But I'm aware of all of my time and space. I'm going to see a friend tomorrow that I haven't seen for, I think it's over a year and a half or 2 years. And it's reminding me to take note of all of the tiny moments and not just rush out into the world and not pay attention to everything. And what Victor said reminds me also of, where I came from, and the miracles of life that the Lord has given us. So I want to try to learn not to take all that time and space for granted, and be aware of every minute as I go forward.
Nice. What else is coming up for you?
I think for me, time is, I think for me, time is a very fleeting moment, because I realized through the losses of family members, like 5 family members within a year, I realized how precious time and space are. And within that realm, I think that I need to step back a bit from this busyness of mind and body and thing, and take time to really contemplate life and the meaning of life, and what these people have meant to me through space and time, and how the time I haven't spent in a good way has been lost time. In fact, I'm caught up in a very busy way of lifestyle, and I don't really step back to reflect at times. I just go with the flow. And when I stop to reflect, it's late, kind of. I miss out on many things. And I think Shabbat is like taking a step back, letting God be God, and letting people come in the first place, go to the essentials, I think.
Right, and this idea of going with the flow, right? Letting God be God. My husband is actually a rabbi, and I found a plaque that he put in his office that he says, "Today I'll let God be God because I'm no good at it." We can't control everything, it's
Yeah.
and when we go with the flow, right? When we're in the present, that's all we have, right? If you think about time as fleeting, right? Time is infinite. Time came way before us, and time's going to go on long after us, right? One of the teachings that I love is that the first thing in the created in the Bible and the Torah, it's not let there be light. It's in the beginning, right? Bereshit. And in the
Yeah.
beginning of what? In the beginning of time, right? Before that moment of Bereshit, there was no time, right? So time actually was the first thing created. You know, and there are scholars that say, well, why didn't God create creation, 10 years before, 1,000 years before, 100,000 years before? And the answer that the rabbis come up with is that there was no time, right? It was when it was. And if we think about the idea of the present moment, right, only existing in a blink, right? It's like a passing train, that as soon as we have that moment's gone. All we have, right? We have to recognize that what we have is that moment. And the past exists, right? The past exists to inform our present, right? We wouldn't be where we were if we didn't have the narrative that we're carrying into it, right? Even the 9 of us that are on the screen together, and there are a few folks joining us on Facebook. We're all coming with our story, right? There's a reason that we all showed up today. And there's a perspective, and there's going to be our takeaways. And in 45 minutes, when we go offline and someone says, what did you talk about in Coffee and Kabbalah? We're all going to say something entirely different, right? And in that sense, the future also exists, right? We can't control the future, but we have free will over the future. And time will exist beyond our finite lifetimes. So we're really just living in a snapshot of the world, right? And the question is, what are we going to do with this? What are we going to do with this moment?
Melanie, I just
Yes.
want to ask you a question. For me, having lost so many family members, I'm always wondering, what is eternity? Is eternity, what is the notion of life after life and eternity? What is it?
Well, that's a really deep theological question. What is eternity? I think when we talk about, in my perspective, when we talk about the infinite, right? What's the infinite? The infinite is one more than we can number, right? Even with the development of science and understanding of outer space and the ways we can put satellites up in the sky and measure with telescopes and technology, right? Scientists still don't know, is there an end to the space? Right. So the eternity is beyond what we can understand. That's my understanding. And when we talk about how do we live on, I go back to this. And when we talk about Kabbalah, when we study Kabbalah, we talk a lot about the study of parallels, right? The parallels of seen and unseen reality, our physical and our spiritual reality. And it all starts to me in the story of creation. So after Bereshit, right, after the beginning of time, it says Vayehi Or. For our Hebrew speakers, what's Or?
Light?
Light, right. Vayehi Or, let there be light. And the Or, right, is written with the letter Aleph. Right, I'll draw it out for you here. So light is translated as, in Hebrew, it's written as Or, and it's translated as light. But what is that light that's created at the beginning on day 1? What is that light? Some people would say it's the sun and the stars and the celestial beings, but that's created on day 4, right? Day 4, we have the sun and the stars and the moon and all those good things in the sky. So then the rabbis and the Kabbalists went back to the question, well then what is light? So there's 2 ways we approach the answer to that question. The answer to that question. One is through the concept of gematria. Gematria is numerology, that every Hebrew letter has a numerical value associated with it. And they looked at the gematria of the word Or. And I'm trying to think. Okay, so Aleph in Hebrew is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, right? So the numerical value of that is 1. Vav is what letter? Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daled, Hey, Vav, right? So 6, right? And Resh is further on in the alphabet, and that's 200. So the gematria, the numerical value of the word Or, is 200 plus 6 plus 1, right? So that's 207. And when the rabbis look at gematria and they're trying to understand the meaning of a word, oftentimes they'll say, well, if Or is 207, what other words have a similar value that'll give us a clue to what that or might be? So when they were looking at other words, they said, well, what has the value of 207? And one of the words they came up with was Raz, which is a secret. And the other word that has the gematria of 207 is Ein Sof. I'm not good at writing. There are some Hebrew letters that have a final, like a sofit. It's written differently at the end of the alphabet. I'm not good at writing those, but I'll write it with a regular today. And Ein Sof is without end, right? It's connected to the infinite and to the mystery, right? So we started to see this connection between Or, right, the light, Raz, which is a secret, and Ein Sof, which is without end. So if you're looking at those three words, what do you see as a connection between those words? What would you see as a common thread?
A connection to the creator.
A connection to the creator. Great. What else?
It seems to be you make light and a start, a beginning, and something that is mysterious.
Right. It's like this mysterious light that doesn't have any ending. Right. It connects us to the infinite. So again, right, we're always talking about the finite and the infinite. Now I'm going to hold that thought for a second. Okay. So we're starting to get the sense of the light as this energy of creation that doesn't have any end, this mysterious light, the primordial light of energy. Right. And if we look at the Lorianic explanation of the story of creation, right, we look at this idea that if God was everywhere and everything, God withdrew into God's self, right? That idea of tzimtzum, of contraction. And that's how God created the space for creation to occur, right? The spiritual withdrew in order for the physical to exist. And then, right, the energy was so intense that we had the shattering of the vessels, right? The Shavirat HaKlalim. That's part 2 in the development of creation. So if you picture like a light bulb that explodes, right? Or a hard-boiled egg that explodes while it's boiling in a pot of water, there's these shards of light that went everywhere because the energy was so intense inside. And our job as humanity, right, is tikkun olam, is repairing the world, is putting these shards of light back together. So the infinite is connected to the finite, right? Our physical selves are finite, right? Our physical bodies are finite, but we have this Or, this energy that's inside of us that is connected to the infinite and the source of all creation, according to the Kabbalists. So when Adam and Eve, going back to that story in Genesis and the story of creation, God said, Vayehi Or, let there be light, right? We're starting to understand this Or as that primordial light energy that connects us all. Adam and Eve were told, what were they told not to do when they were in the Garden of Eden?
Tree of knowledge.
Don't what?
Eat from the tree of knowledge.
Right. Don't eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So what did they do? They ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? Because we're humans. We're fallible. And they were told, if you eat from this tree, surely you'll die. They didn't die, right? What happened? They were banished. Right, they were banished from the Garden of Eden, and their parting gift from the garden was coat note Or, garments of skin. So now we're hearing this word Or again, but it's written differently. It's written with the letter Ayin. So phonetically, you hear Or, right? It's the same as the light, but instead of being written with an Aleph, as in light, and I'll show it to you here, it's being written with an Ayin. Okay, so different Hebrew letter. It's, if you speak Hebrew, right, it's more of a guttural Or, right, like it comes more from here than from here. But Or is skin. So they go, according to the Kabbalists, according to the Zohar, it says they went from being light, from being energy beings, to being physical skin beings. Right, so again, we're seeing that connection between physical and the spiritual, right? That Adam and Eve went from being these spiritual beings to being these physical beings. but the skin was what was covering their light, right? Our skin, our physical skin becomes the layers, right? If we think about light and energy creating layers, that creates matter, right? Matter is just layered energy. And if energy and matter, if energy is neither created nor destroyed, right, that energy from the beginning, from ore, still exists within each of us today. And our bodies almost become the vessels, right? Our bodies become the vessels or the containers for them. Go ahead, Raquel. You're muted though. Raquel, you're muted.
You said that they did not die. They were just let go from the Garden of Eden, but they will die. We don't know really if we stayed in the Garden of Eden without eating from the tree of knowledge, if they would die or not at the end of or how long, when they get old, or they even if they get old. So that's a question that we don't know.
Well, then that's part of the question that Corinne asks, right? Is if even after our bodies are gone, do our souls live on?
That's true.
What is eternity? And to me, from my perspective, if you think about the spirit of somebody that's passed being connected to you, or you feeling connected to them, or how you could still love somebody after they've passed, or you could still feel their love, right? To me, that's an example of our souls living on, right? The way we name our children after loved ones, right? That's them living on.
So it's the body that dies, not the soul. The soul stays.
Exactly. Right. And to me, right, that this is my understanding. That's how our souls exist through eternity, right? That ore that our bodies hold at this moment in time is ore that was at the beginning of the source of creation. And it doesn't matter if we're Jewish or Buddhist or Catholic or Protestant or atheists or just spiritual, right? We all come from that same source. And what happens is that our bodies become our masks, right? Masks, not in a pejorative way, but a mask in the sense that that's what our eyes begin to see, right? That's what other people's eyes see. When you come on the screen, right, we see different skin colors, we see different backgrounds, we see different glasses and hair and facial hair and, all the things that we present, right? Some of it we're born with and some of it we choose, right? We could choose our dark hair or our light hair. I'm trying to go gray, actually. We choose if we want to have a beard or not. We choose what our glasses look like, right? We don't necessarily choose our skin or our body type or our gender. Although now we're more and more aware of how people sometimes are born in a gender that they don't identify with, so they are able to transition. Right? I was born a she, but I've always felt that I'm a he or a they. Right? All those, sorry, UPS man. All those things, right, the layers that we take on, right? Whether it's as a teacher, a student, a parent, an electrician, a friend, a kind person, a snobby person, right? Like all the ways that we can choose to present ourselves become our masks. But those are all finite, right? Our masks are finite. And they could be physical, they could be spiritual, they could be identities, right? Even our religious identities are just masks, right? What's underneath our religious identity? Soul, right? Is it even possible, right? This is what we go into our second year of class. Is it even possible to pull away all our masks? Right? Or are we masks all the way down? It's like an onion, right? Peeling back the layers of an onion. Is there anything in the middle of it? Or what's in the middle of it when we peel back all the layers? And what happens if I was a teacher my whole life or a doctor my whole life, and then I retire? Am I still a teacher or a doctor? Or do I take on a different identity? Right? Or if I was a married person and I got divorced, or if I was a mom and I lost my child, right? Like all those things that we think about as our identities are masks, right? So our masks are physical. Some masks we choose, some masks we don't choose. A lot of our masks are around our doing, right? What are the things you do in your life? right? I'm running, I'm wrestling, I'm playing cards, I'm an artist, I'm a musician, right? I'm a lifelong learner. Right? All those things are our doing. Those are our masks and identities. But what's behind our masks is our metaphors, right? Is our stories. Is a narrative that brings us to that, right? Why do I choose to show up as a student at Kabbalah Experience? Right? Why do I choose Kabbalah Experience as compared to any of the million organizations that are offering online classes at this very moment? Right? And we all have our different stories, right? Our story of experiencing adversity, illness, isolation, right? Immigration, all the stories that we carry into this moment. And those are the stories that inform our masks, right? When we present ourselves, even when we're putting ourselves on the screen, right? Victor presents his name in English and in Hebrew, and he's from Kansas, right? That's telling us who Victor is, right? When someone comes on as iPhone, I don't know who they are. I want to know your name, right? It helps me to see your face because I could connect with you. And what's interesting, right? And Rachel, you're a Hebrew speaker, right? If we look at that word or for skin, what's another word in Hebrew that has that same ayin vav resh?
Put it off because I have a dog. Ivel.
Nachon, exactly, iver. And what does iver mean? What?
Blind.
Right. So the same three letters, the same root, could either be skin or blind. Right? This stuff doesn't happen randomly, right? In the same way that we look at or being connected to Raz, being connected to Ein Sof, right? What's the connection with this same word being connected to blindness or being connected to skin? Why do you think the folks who created the Hebrew language made a connection between skin and blindness?
You shouldn't look at the skin, the color of the skin, I think, is that you kind of blindness because we're all the same.
Right. And what is it about blind people? What a blind, oh, sorry, go ahead, Annette.
They can't see the light, so they have to touch. The sensation of touching is instead of their ability to see. They don't, this light, they have the other kind of touching sensation.
Right. Blind people see through their other senses.
Right.
Right. And when someone can see an aura, right, again, connected to that word or, that light energy, when someone sees an aura, right, they can really sense your energy. They can sense you energetically. They're not looking at your masks.
They can feel it, right?
They can feel it, right? There's a great book about a young boy named Jacques Lucerne, who was blinded when he was in elementary school. So he was born sighted, and he fell down the stairs in school, and his glasses broke and blinded one of his eyes, and his other eye went blind as well to compensate. But he knew colors, right? He knew how to express colors, and he would start to see people as a red cherry, right? I didn't know her name, but all I knew was that she was like a red cherry, right? And he became a messenger in the French Resistance because he knew if he could trust people because he could sense their energy. He could see them more intuitively than those people who were physically sighted, right? So we talk about, perhaps people connected blindness with skin, with the understanding, maybe they thought there was an extra layer of skin over people's eyes, right, that they couldn't see. But I think what we're learning is that folks who are blind actually see a lot more deeper than the rest of us, right? They see your or with an aleph and not your or with an ayin.
Yes, because they're not using their eyes to deceive them.
Right. Right. And what does that mean for the rest of us?
The skin and the light, if you're talking about that, the way I understand it is that since we're in there, then it's actually, we're having to learn because we don't know. Because we're so in a way putting it, we're blinded by the light that we can't see because we can't see, and so we input it and we come up with the wrong things that are not really there because we fool ourselves. Whereas somebody that's blind, like you said, they can feel things, they understand things at a deeper level, but they have to. And it's just a deeper level with the brain because technically I believe the eyes are part of the brain. So the brain is just doing what it does.
Right. And how do we start to do that? We start to do, go ahead, Victor.
Trust or faith or however you want to call it, whatever you.
Right. It's paying attention to what shows up. Right. It's not just the physical that we're looking for, it's the spiritual. Right. How do we start tuning in to the unseen reality around us? Right. How do we pay attention to the aura? Right. How do we pay attention to the infinite informing our finite selves? How do we pay attention to the spiritual moments that inform our physical experience? Right? How do we pay attention to the fact that we all come from that same source of light and energy? And we're all, there's another poem that we often refer to where it says, we're all pieces in one another's puzzle, right? Whether we know it or not. Sometimes we show up at the moment that someone just needs us, right? And sometimes someone shows up at the moment we need them, right? Running into someone at a supermarket, you know, whether it's a friend or a stranger, right? Thinking about somebody and all of a sudden they call you, right? Being kind to the stranger. You know, in Jewish tradition, we talk about the Lamed Vavniks, the Tzadikim. They're righteous. There are 36 righteous people that exist in the world that are going to bring the Messiah, right? Going to bring healing and peace and shalom, right, to the world and wholeness. But we don't know who they are. So if we approach each person as if they're the most holy person that we've ever seen, right? That there's a meaning, that there's a reason that we're encountering one another at this important moment. That's how we live a life of greater meaning. But it's practice, right? We don't experience prayer or meditation or even biking or running, right? Without pain, unless we practice a little bit. You know, anything, practicing gratitude, right? I can say I want to live a life of gratitude, but unless I'm practicing it, it's not going to come naturally, right? For my friends that come to synagogue once a year and they say, I was so disengaged during my prayer experience. It's like, well, you have to practice, right? You have to settle into your space a little bit. For those of us that try to meditate and we have all the monkeys in our brain, right? We don't know how to shut them off. It comes with practice. Anything we want to do comes with practice. And if we want to tune in a little bit deeper to that sense of connection and interconnection and tune into the humanity of the world, right? That also takes practice. And it takes practice for us to be paying attention to what's showing up for us, right? It's paying attention that Corinne and Victor and Catherine and Sean and Annette and Rachel and Louise and Lynn and I, we're all here together at this moment, right? How many millions of miracles does it take for anything to happen in any given moment, right? That Corinne could be here at midnight in the middle of the Indian Ocean, right? That we're all choosing to show up, that we saw this pop up somewhere, whether it's through our synagogue email list in Woodstock or My Jewish Learning or something from the Kabbalah experience, right? But we're choosing to show up, right? We can't sit at home waiting for the world to show up for us also. We also have to choose to engage and to practice, to seek deeper meaning in our lives. And that's what we do with the Kabbalah experience, right? When we talk about Kabbalah, again, you know, as a study of parallels, and we can dive into that more deeply, but always we're talking about the parallels, right? Between our seen and unseen reality, our physical and our spiritual, our finite and our infinite, right? We ask the questions of how does the finite create the space for the infinite, right? How does our physical bodies, which are vessels, hold infinite love, infinite light, infinite soul? And in the same sense, how did the infinite, right? God or the divine create the space for the physical, right? The finite to exist? You know, how do we find light in the darkness, right? All these questions. So we're actually in this pause right now between our spring semester and our summer semester. And I want to invite you to join us. We're offering free introductory classes the weeks of June 23rd and 30th. Just pop in for an hour, join us on Zoom. learn more about what we're teaching, why we're teaching, and how we're teaching it. Our first year curriculum, our first year curriculum is based on soul, space, and time. The first class is generally soul, where we discuss a lot of the topics that we covered today, and the basic principles of Kabbalah. We dive a whole lot deeper because it's an hour a week for 8 weeks rather than an hour on one foot. The class on space is studying the tree of life, or the Sefirot, if you've ever studied them or learned about them. We really dive deep into what do each of the Sefirot represent, how are they connected, the vertical, the horizontal connections between the Sefirot. And we look at things that are manifesting in our lives and understanding the tree of life as an energy structure where things manifest in the same way that like our Windows operating system is working in the background, right? Our cardiovascular, our GI system are working in the background. The deeper we understand it, the deeper we can manage it, right? Sometimes things happen whether or not we're paying attention to them. But again, we talk about paying attention to what's showing up for us. So I'll be teaching those 2 classes in the summer, as well as, and we only teach time in the spring. So you just missed that, but you'll have an opportunity to take that next spring. And during the summer, we also have a lot of electives. If you've ever studied Brene Brown, I have a whole class on Brene Brown and Kabbalah, dreams and Kabbalah and tarot cards. One of my spiritual mentors is teaching a class on aging and saging through the tenets of Kabbalah. So I encourage you and I invite you either to check out our free introductory classes or our summer classes. We'd really just be thrilled to have you join us. And also you might have seen, and I'll put the link in our chat, you might have seen on My Jewish Learning as well, that David Sanders, who's the founder of our organization, is teaching a 3-week class on Shtisel. Has anyone seen that TV show? I forget if it's on Hulu. I think it's on Hulu or Netflix. It's about an ultra-Orthodox community in Israel. And he's doing a class on the Kabbalah of Shtisel. So it's a 3-week free class that you're invited to join. We just had the first class last week. If you're interested, just email Mindy in our office and we'll forward you the link to join us for the next couple of weeks. Great. So any other questions about, I know we covered a lot of ground today. Really, we were hitting on a lot of topics that I hit in my 10-week soul class. But I promise if you take the class, we'll go a whole lot deeper and have a lot more time for conversation. But any questions about what's come up for you today, either related to what we discussed or about upcoming classes with Kabbalah experience?
Do you have any classes on that Gematria? Is that how you say it?
Gematria, I don't this summer. One of the classes in Seoul is about Gematria and numerology. But sometimes we do offer a class on mystical Hebrew letters, and we dive into that. I'll show you a couple of books I would recommend you to read.
Okay.
In 1 second. Okay, I have 3 books for you. One is The Book of Letters by Lawrence Kushner. And this is beautifully written. It's handwritten rather than being in a typeface. And like the words are horizontal and vertical. And he'll talk about like how the letter is written, what the sound of the word is about, and what some of the deeper meanings behind that letter is. This book, which is put out by Art Scroll, which is more of a modern Orthodox approach, is The Wisdom in the Hebrew Alphabet by Rabbi Michael Munk, M-U-N-K. And this also looks at each of the letters. It's a little deeper. There's a lot more text, but I'll look at each of the letters and its meaning and its symbolism. And we really talk about Hebrew again as part of our seen and unseen reality, right? Hebrew letters aren't just a phonetic clue of how to say a word. Hebrew has codes in it, right? Whether we're looking at the numerology or we're looking at how the letter is written, there's always deeper meanings to Hebrew letters. And then the third book, which I have that's kind of falling apart, I need to replace it, is called Hebrew Letters by Rabbi Yitzhak Ginsburg. Here, The Channels of Creative Consciousness. This one, by Rabbi Yitzhak Ginsburg. And this is, Rabbi Ginsburg was my teacher's teacher. So this was actually his book. But they talk about the letter, the form, connecting it to the different worlds in the 4 levels of world that we study in Kabbalah, different ways that it's written, and what some deeper meanings and associations with the number. So like, for example, for the letter Gimel, right, I'll tell you the word Gimel means camel or a bridge in Aramaic, meaning and benevolence, and it connects it to the 4 worlds, connects it to souls. The letter Gimel equals 3, and it connects, then I'll talk about, 3 represents stability and equilibrium. So this is probably the most, I want to say, holistic in the sense, all encompassing of the 3 books, but they're all great resources. And we do often in Rabbi Jamie, who's one of our core faculty, teaches a class on mystical Hebrew letters, and he's a special teacher.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
So where are all the classes published? How would we know about them?
Since you're in Coffee and Kabbalah, you're on my email list. So we send out emails on Thursdays. So you should be getting an email from me that I'll be sending out this afternoon in the next couple of hours. I'll also show you, I put the link in the chat, but here you can see on our website, our semester, or it's KabbalahExperience.com/live study. And you could see our free introductory classes. We have a class pass. So if you have time and you want to take more than 1 class, you could just pay for 2 and take as many as you want. And then the level 1 classes are where I would suggest starting. And we also offer pay as you can for new students. So we never want cost to be a barrier to participation. Generally, our classes are $325 for guests or $275 for members. We have a $50 membership fee, so it's kind of a wash in your first class, but then you get the discount for the rest of the year. But for your first class, we invite you to pay as you can because we want you to come. We'd rather you come and pay what you're comfortable with than feeling like it's a financial burden. So we really do invite you to join us. So Seoul will be Wednesdays at noon Mountain, 2:00 Eastern, or Thursdays at noon Mountain, 2:00 Eastern. And Space will be Wednesdays at 1:30 Mountain or 3:30 Eastern, starting in mid-July. And then here are some of the advanced and special courses. So you'll see that in the link that I posted in our chat as well.
Thanks.
And during the summer, we play a little more. We have this class on meditation will be great as well. We have a 4-year curriculum that we kind of level by. It's not like you get a certificate or a degree at the end, but it's the first year is really understanding the basic tenets of transformative Kabbalah and how we teach it. Second year is more about you, right? Your masks and your metaphors and how are you living in time. The third year is more about the human narrative, right? How do we take these teachings and understandings and expand it to our experience of humankind and making the world a better place? And the fourth year is about, rather than going down the tree of life, we're going back up the tree of life and looking from a different perspective and depth of the Sfirot and our own experiences and journeys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. I'll put my email in here and also the email that you got from Mindy with the Zoom link. You can always email her or me directly, and we're happy to help answer any questions. Great. So thank you guys so much for spending time with us this afternoon. It's great to see you. And I'm actually not going to be teaching next Thursday.